Joan. I'm got my camera off. I'm on the road here, but I'm here.
Thank you, Steve. Be safe.
Yes.
I've been there myself.
Yeah, I'm pulled over. I'm all good.
I'm sure you're good.
We weren't going to ask, Steve. We're just glad you're safe.
Yeah.
Safe is good.
Let's see. See, Elaine and Frank, we know Steve's here. Do you know if Robin and Meredith are here yet?
I have not heard from either of them.
Okay. Well, we do have a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully they'll just kind of arrive, as we begin. We'll call this meeting to order, and let's see, Director Wilson is here. I see you here, Frank. And Director Hogan.
Yep, here.
Director Madrone.
Present, and I have empty barrels in my truck because all my recycling's now been recycled. Thank you, Hambro.
Great. I bet we'll be hearing more about that later. Let's see. And Director Matthews? Not yet arrived. Okay. Hopefully soon. And Director Smith? Okay. Hopefully they'll arrive soon. Peter, do you have the capacity to send them a text? Do you have their information?
I can find it quickly, yes.
Just in case. Okay. If you wouldn't mind doing that,
No
just
problem.
in case while we're getting started. Okay. Let's go ahead to the consent calendar.
Mhm.
All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the HWMA board and will be enacted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or a member of the public. The consent calendar will not be read. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless pulled for discussion. Would anyone like to pull any item from the consent calendar for discussion? Okay, seeing none. Would any members of the public like to speak to the consent calendar? Okay, I do not see any hands raised. All right, would anyone like to entertain a motion?
Move approval of the minutes, Madrone.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, consent calendar, excuse me.
And I'll second.
Thank you, Director Hogan. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Oh, I believe you should do a roll call because you are still on video.
Okay,
I'm sorry. That would have been efficient, but.
that's great. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
Director
Thank you,
Wilson.
Nancy.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Hogan.
Yes.
Director Madrone.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay. We will move on to oral and written communications. The time is provided for people to address the board or to submit written communications concerning matters not on this agenda. Board members may respond to statements, but any request that requires board action will be referred to staff for review. Reasonable time limits may be imposed on both the total amount of time allocated to this item and on the time permitted to each individual speaker. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comment at this time? Looking hands, any hands? I don't see any hands raised. Director Fuller, have we received any written communication?
I have not, no.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing that no one wishes to make comment, we will close oral and written communications and move on to the item number 4, approving the fiscal year 2022-2023 final budget, the resolution 2023-01. And I will turn it over to you, Director Fuller, for a report.
There is nothing substantively different between this document and what we covered in the April meeting. I will apologize for typos that I found and vetted and corrected. Other than that, everything is as remains. The main thing that everyone wants to know is I have requested a 5% fee increase across the board to accommodate escalating costs, fuel being one of them, and to ensure that we're paying our people competitive wages. Other than that, everything is as it was during the April meeting. And if anyone has questions, we can field them at this time.
I do have a question.
I'm sorry,
Go for it, Director Wilson.
Director Wilson, thank you. Yes.
Could you highlight the specific items that are being increased by the 5%? Which fees are?
Yes, I have this summarized in the front parts. Bear with me here. Okay, at the bottom of page 5 and the top of page 6 addresses those and tells you what the fees are going to be. And the actual fee table itself is toward the end of the report. And that begins on page 37. So page 37 starts with Schedule A, HWMA fee table for the fiscal year. And I will read what we have in page 5. Waste management fees are comprised of countywide program fee, the base tip fee rate, and the facility fees, which are reviewed, adjusted, and improved annually. This budget proposes 5% increase in the waste management fee. That's $135.46 per ton franchise, $163.61 per ton self-haul, $103.50 per ton for the Eel River Ecology Satellite Facility, and $103.50 per ton through the Humboldt Sanitation Satellite Facility. Countywide programs fees will increase slightly to $24.14 a ton. Other than that, everything is as it was last year. And Eric, if I'm not correct in that, please jump in, but I believe that's where we are with it. So those are the ones that will be affected.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have a question, and it is a little bit related to another item on the agenda. Well, it's just related to, so I noticed on page, hold on, let me find it again. There's the amount delegated for capital improvement reserves is 900,000.
Yes.
That we are looking at a potential capital improvement project that's much larger than that, which hasn't been allocated for in this budget yet. Am I correct?
Are you speaking to the possibility of going to organic on our floor versus recycling? Yeah. That
I haven't made that decision, so we can't really.
no. Okay, but yes, and that is correct. The 900,000 is for projects that were either delayed from 2021 or before, and that we need to do this year as well, having to do with Cummings Road landfill and some improvements here at Hawthorne Street. It does not address any of the potential switch over from recycling to organic waste. That is correct. And one of the recommendations, well, one of the suggestions to the board, if it's the pleasure of the board at the end here when we get to Eric's report, is we would need to use the undesignated reserves to fund that for the time being, if indeed we go that route. Because in this budget, we didn't budget accounting for that. The fee vetting and everything we did now did not incorporate the organic waste. Eric, do you want to speak to that? You just came on, or am I okay with that?
No, you're correct. We would use some of the undesignated reserves, depending on what direction the board gives relating to organics and the Eureka Recycling Center. But we would also, it would be a good recommendation to look into other funding sources, because the projected costs of the report later at this board meeting would fully expend our undesignated reserves, and that's not a great way to go. So we would need to look at other funding mechanisms as well, like we have in the past for larger projects.
Thank you. And so for, for right now, this moment in time, approve this budget, and then pending our decision in this very meeting, potentially look at updating the budget later on according to changes or things like that. Okay.
That is exactly correct, Madam Chair. That is what we would be doing. And I will be first to say unabashedly, we'll be scrambling for all alternative funding I can get my hands on if this is the pleasure of the board, because it needs to be done. We have to find the money to do it. We'll figure it out. But this budget does not encompass that. That is correct.
Okay, cool. I didn't see it in there, but I just wanted to, anyway.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Are there any other questions for staff? Would any members of the public like to make comment on this item? Director Wise.
Thank you. I just thought I'd point out again, like I did last month, that the recycling processing fee is going down by 11%. And that is reflective of the improved commodities market, and also because the CRV that people have been putting in their blue can was recovered, and we put it toward this rate. So that was what happened last year and how we based this rate. So you can all assure your public that the CRV was not lost during the years that we did not have a buyback center available. So we're kind of unusual in a lot of other collection companies and other processing companies where that does happen. That was the way that the contract was written. And that is going to help soften, the impacts of collection fees and increases in disposal fees. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
We do appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comment on this item? Don't see any hands raised. Okay. Do any members of the board wish to make comment or entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'll motion that we approve the fiscal year 22-23 budget as presented.
And I believe we also are requested to adopt resolution 2023-01 along with that.
That is correct.
So moved.
Thank you, Director Hogan. Would anyone like to second that?
Steve Madrone, second.
Thank you, Director Madrone. Are there any other comments that folks would like to make? Or are we ready for the vote?
Just one question was last week we didn't, or last meeting, we didn't approve this because they were going to take this by the executive committee. Was this presented to the executive committee?
Yes, it was. And per Nancy's very timely reminder, we needed 30 days to let it be vetted that way. We did. Yes, it was.
And their statement was?
To my knowledge, nobody had any objective to it. Eric, will you help me with that? I believe we did meet with them, but I don't know that we had a whole lot of response.
As far as I know, there was no response back from the committee with any recommended changes.
That's what I'm remembering. I just want to be sure I'm aligned with what you remembered. It's been a bit of a whirlwind, but that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question, Director Wilson.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is Director Madrone. I don't have any issues with the budget. I want to thank staff for all their hard work to try and manage the budget and all these details. A lot of great information in the last several months. Really, the big discussion is what are we doing with the organics and recycling that is coming up on the agenda, and that's where there's probably a lot of considerations and thoughts there. But as far as the budget, I'm happy with it, and thanks staff for your work.
Thank you, Supervisor Madrone, and to the board also. Everyone knows I'm still new and working very hard to ensure that whatever was done in the past, if it's not broke, let's don't fix it. But if it needs to be fixed, we're going to vet it and fix it and make the recommendation. So your support is noted and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Fuller. Okay, well, let's go ahead and take it to the vote. Director Hogan,
Yes.
Director Madrone,
Yes.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. And Director Matthews and Director Smith are still absent. So four yes votes, motion passes. And we will move on to, thank you everyone, to standing item number 5, CRV and recycling update.
Yes, I'm going to invite Hambro to go ahead and present on this first, and then Eric Keller will jump in on once Hambro's done. Dave, you're up.
Okay, great to be with you tonight. As of April 1st, Hambro opened the recycling center in Arcata.
Can you turn up your volume a bit, Dave?
That might be on our.
Okay, I'm having trouble hearing you. I don't know if others are.
I can't hardly hear him at all.
Okay,
Is this any better? A bit
that's better to me. That's better on my end.
A little better.
Okay. April 1st, we opened a new recycling center in Arcata. At 3 o'clock on April 1st, we received our temporary occupancy certificate. At 3:20, we serviced our first customer. It was necessary to be open on April 1st in order to collect handling fees for the month of April. We were very busy on April 1st, getting those things processed. On April 2nd was a Saturday. Without much publicity, we still had a huge day, and it continued for the next several weeks, and it still continues at a more than acceptable level. In April, we serviced 3,381 customers. We purchased 5,710,935 containers. Randy, did you count them?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're pretty close. We shipped 160 tons of material to be recycled. We were able to provide this service without interfering with the public roads. That was a great concern after the Hawthorne adventures year previous. We think the reason we were successful and able to do this is because we had a good plan. We had a traffic plan that was worked well. We could put 40 vehicles off of the street onto the properties that we have leased. We had a traffic manager and assisted by a second one at times, who was busy. If the material was sorted, we were still able to get customers through the process in 2 hours, which we expected. We were shooting to improve on that. And after the first 2 days, we were able to get it down to an hour and a half. We had a good plan. We brought some trained staff down from Crescent City to help train the new folks in Eureka, but we brought several up here and they received training in Crescent City. We hired 12 Humboldt people, and we still have 10 of them with us. We researched this project well. We made a significant investment in the hardware and software that allowed our scales to communicate with our cashier, which got a major step out of the process that we previously used here in Crescent City. We were able to test that process in Crescent City, so when we brought it to Arcata, it was up and running and has run well ever since. We're still servicing 150 customers thereabouts a day. Our future plans are to consider looking at opportunities in underserved areas of Humboldt County where we are looking at providing a mobile service where we might be in those communities a day or two a week. That's contingent on a pilot project being offered by Cal Recycle. We'll be seeking information from folks in Humboldt County. So if you have any suggestions or guidance, we're open to that. We made contacts with some people in Southern Humboldt County already. This project will have to be authorized by the county or city governments, wherever we have to be looking for these opportunities. There still are some challenges to include the processing fees that have been mentioned. We're looking at a reduction in the processing fees in the near future. The commodities prices continue to be pretty erratic. It's been, in the case of aluminum, it's been up and down in the last, since we opened, which is the last month. Aluminum has gone down 20%. So that's part of the CRB business, is staying within the operating parameters and numbers that we're given that we can control or not control. And those processing fee concerns, we're hoping that rather than see the reduction based on the prices, that it's readjusted on I'd like to say a regular basis, but a bit of an irregular basis, because commodity prices change so regularly that we'd like to see, and we're encouraging folks that we're involved with to make the processing fees less of a reduction in these rural areas. We have the cost, of course, of shipping materials from Crescent City and Eureka, whereas if you're in the valley, it's much cheaper. If you're in the Sacramento or Los Angeles area, that's not a concern at all. So we have those challenges. We're staying very busy. We're enjoying providing the service. We've got lots of positive feedback. I've been out there tilting cans myself a time or two, and apparently I am too old to tilt cans, because at the end of the day, it's a pretty rigorous event. We're looking forward to continuing these services and getting better at it. Again, we've had lots of compliments, and we've had some complaints as well. We're doing the best we can. We've had as many as 14 people out working on this to get the people in and out. Once the customers have been great for the most part, and once they learn the sequence, they help us. So if you have any questions, we're ready to answer, or at least make a run at it. Any guidance? We're willing to accept guidance as well.
Well, firstly, just thank you. Yes, we've been all wondering a little bit how it's been going for you, and especially you came before us when you were considering the project, and so it's really great to hear that it's implemented, and that I know your industry is changes rapidly, and so we definitely appreciate your kind of mettle for being willing to enter into it. I have a couple questions, but I wanted to see if any other members of the board had questions. Or advice. I think advice is also welcome, it sounds like. Director Fuller, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. No, I'm just curious, Dave, thank you. First of all, it's concise, informative, much appreciated. On your mobile, you mentioned mobile facility 1 to 2 days a week. Do you have any kind of anticipated capacity for that? How much you think you can handle, just as a first guess?
No, we've had it off after what we've done up here. So we're looking at a
Sure.
box truck or possibly with a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
But we would I don't think the outlying area is going to provide near the capacity that we've looked at.
Right. I was just curious.
We would super it up to make it happen. Part of that mobile that would make this work is we'd be bringing that material back to Arcata to be baled and processed.
Right.
So
Okay.
We would project a load a day from these outlying areas, possibly a second load, as well as the as long as they haven't had service. But then we think it would come back to probably a load of material a day and maybe a trailer load.
Okay, excellent. And I guess my one other question, since I'm all new to the whole CRV, when I didn't have the joy of experiencing what Eric did and my predecessors did here in the past, are you at liberty to disclose, in your opinion, what was your biggest bottleneck in getting it up and running? And if you don't want to say so, what's that?
Permits.
Okay. All right. But once running, did you feel that there were minimal traffic concerns and it went pretty smoothly, all things considered?
Yes, it is. And we have to mention that the city of Arcata, I found it very difficult at the beginning, but David Lola, Joe Bishop have been very, very helpful. So
Excellent.
we did that in addition to the coastal commission. But
Okay.
it was more onerous than I ever expected it would be.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a quick question of what all do you actually recycle there? Maybe it's a basic question, but just in terms of kind of getting the word out and knowing, what if there are gaps in our sort of local recycling system.
There certainly are. We handle CRV products only. So if you paid for it when you bought it, we'll reimburse you for those commodities. If it says recycle on it, that doesn't mean we'll take it because we're not compensated for it. And again, the commodity market's crazy. I think historically there was room for you to make money at that, but we can only handle product that we're going to be compensated for.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. That's really good to know. Thank you. Director Wilson or Hogan or Madrone, do you have any questions?
I have sort of a simple one, but do you require the people to pre-sort stuff, like separate colored bottles from non-colored or different? Do you have sorting requirements to make this work?
Yes, you have to sort your aluminum, your plastic, and your glass. We're not requiring the glass to be sorted. Glass is a loser any way we look at it. And so we're not requiring the glass to be sorted. So all the glass, green, clear, and brown is accepted as glass at this time.
Thank you.
And here's a question, and I don't at all mean to put you on the spot with this, but I'm sure you can imagine that kind of your business and what's going on there, exists in relationship with, Recology and HWMA, and there's a landscape of recyclers and waste, people looking at waste reduction and what to do with waste. Would you all be willing to kind of keep in regular conversation with your plans and what you're planning? Because I think it definitely affects how we make our plans.
I'm not sure how to answer that other than we provide a service, and that's the service we provide. We're not renegades or rebels or anything. We realize that material that has gone into the blue bin for the last 2 years, a portion of that is now going to come to us. But we have no guilt about giving somebody their money that they paid for a product back to them. But I haven't met local, like I've never met Linda, talked to her, emailed her once, but we're willing to talk to anybody about anything.
Great. I mean, clearly, we're not going to we couldn't and wouldn't require you to, but I think it is just, like our board, for instance, has been asking Director Fuller for the last couple of months, like, how's it going? Just because we're making some fairly high level decisions that are somewhat dependent on the success of your business, right? In terms of what our communities are doing with waste. And so I just want to hopefully encourage that, more communication, certainly I think from our board standpoint is better, just in terms of helping us make decisions about what's going on, what we're doing with, waste and recycling and waste reduction efforts and things like that.
So I think, this is Randy, I think what we shared tonight is we want to provide CRV recycling for the county of Humboldt. With our base in Arcata and working on remote access to recycling in the southern Humboldt area, maybe eastern Humboldt. That's our whole, I guess our goal right now, our plan is to provide Humboldt County with CRV recycling.
Great, thank you. I see Director Madrone has a question.
Yeah, more of a comment, but I just wanted to thank Hambro for the investment in our community and getting things up and running. And as somebody who used their facility recently, it was really well organized, very helpful staff. I commend you on all of those elements. I also see that Tom Matson's on board with us here tonight. And I know he had some thoughts, suggestions, concerns about our overall process as a board of where we're going next with the Eureka Recycling Center and/or green waste and all these other things, organic waste, et cetera. So at whatever point, Madam Chair, you think it's appropriate, I'm sure he would like to join the conversation. Thank you.
Great, well, I'll open it up for public comment. And this item is specific to CRV, and we do have item number 6 that will cover more composting, green waste, things like that. But yeah, so I'll open it up to public comment, and I see Tom Matson there. Go ahead.
I would just offer to Hambro, if there's anything the county can do to facilitate your pop-ups in the county jurisdictions, feel free to contact us, whether it's needing the use of a county property or whatever permits you might need to work in the roadway. Feel free to contact me, and we will do whatever we can to facilitate, not just in southern Humboldt, but northeastern Humboldt, also Willow Creek area. I don't know what your radius would be from Arcata, but if you give me a list of what you need, I can certainly work on it.
You're muted there, Hambro. If you're...
There we go.
That's much appreciated. I have some roots in southern Humboldt County, and we've used those contacts, but it'd be great. I look forward, I'll get a hold of you this week.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make comment? Okay, close public comment. I don't see any hands raised. Director Fuller, did you have anything else you wanted to add about CRV and recycling specifically, or will that also be covered in the next SB 1383 item?
No, I don't have anything other than to thank Mr. Slagle and company for your efforts in getting it up and running in the city of Arcata, and the patience with the board, Supervisor Madrone, in particular, as we figured all this out, and the timing was great as Hambro came online. Just everyone's thanks for a concerted effort, but no, other than that, no.
Great. Yeah. Yeah, and I do just want to reiterate that thanks. It's really great to have y'all in town, and folks not having to drive to Crescent City to use your services. So thanks for persevering. And with
Great kudos for our crew. We do have a tremendous staff. We had a great staff in Crescent City, and it's turned just out almost as good down in Humboldt County. So as you utilize that service, if you give them a pat on the back as they go through, they've really done a great job. So thank you guys. We're up and running. Looking forward to providing the service for a long time.
And an extra thanks for joining us tonight. And
Yes.
with that, we will close that item and move on to item number 6, the SB 1383 update.
Well, we're going to really sort of combine 5 and 6. Eric Keller's going to go next and speak to the organics report, and then I'll let Evan speak to what he needs to speak to regarding SB 1383 per se. So Eric, you have the floor.
All righty. Good evening, board. Just for a little bit of background, but I'm sure you know, at the special meeting in February, staff was directed to develop some projected costs and timelines for potentially relocating the Eureka Recycling Center and repurposing that area of the transfer station as an organics processing facility. To reiterate, one of the biggest keys and why that area is so valuable is the truncated timeline that we're dealing with for SB 1383 compliance. Thanks to Edgar and Associates and his help with the participating jurisdictions, we've pushed out most of those compliance deadlines to January 2023. That's still a very, very short timeline to accomplish what we need to ensure your jurisdictions are compliant. Because of that truncated timeline, the Eureka Recycling Center's value is very good because it's inside the solid waste facility permit. That means that instead of having to re-permit another site that could take 2 to 5 years, depending on permitting, zoning, infrastructure, we're looking at a transfer and processing report amendment that could take from 30 to 150 days. We're still waiting to hear back from County LEA as to regards to that exact process and what that's going to look like. I'm going to talk a little bit about the timeline and the projected costs, but first I'm going to hand it over to Evan from Edgar and Associates, and he is going to talk about what that process inside the Eureka Recycling Center's current footprint is going to look like.
Thank you, Eric. Madam Chair and Directors, I'm Evan Edgar from Edgar Associates based in Sacramento. For the other folks who haven't talked to yet, I see Spencer Fine from Cow Recycle and Gary Penning from Dry Creek online. So, and I got Omar from my staff, the staff engineer. This is a critical. I've done this in many locations throughout California to meet 1383 guidelines to repurpose solid waste facilities permit to handle not only the co-collective residential organics with residential food waste in the green cart, but also handle the commercial from the restaurants and the post-consumer slop, which is pretty sloppy. So it's got to be definitely enclosed. Up in Humboldt County, a lot of stormwater pollution prevention plan concerns, got to be covered. You got vectors from different seagulls. So having a covered footprint for a solid waste facilities permit is critical. We walked the floor with a local enforcement agency when I was up there, and it's an ideal location. It has 4 bays backing in so you can separate traffic between commercial and residential and self-haul. There's enough room for additional equipment should you want to make any food processing equipment in order to make an organic slurry for anaerobic digestion or for fish food or for composting. So all the facilities I've seen throughout California, this is an ideal situation and timely. What goes on inside of the footprint, it would separate out the residential green waste from the residential food waste, and that would go in with the commercial food waste. There'd be a bunker for the commercial food waste. Having 19,000 square feet and 4 bays is perfect. And the LEA statewide and makes different decisions if you need to have a solid waste permit revision, which is 150 days, or a simple permit amendment, which is 30 days. Either way, it's doable in a short term because what we're seeing out there to start a collection program. I just got back from Waste Expo in Las Vegas, and it's a premier waste exposition for Northern California and throughout the world. And what we're seeing is that some of the delays on collection equipment for new trucks is about 18 months. So what we're trying to do is make collection to processing. So the planning horizon is in front of us. So we want to get the collection going with processing, but to be active, the goal of Cow Recycle, and Spencer Fine can talk more about it, with SB 619, we bought a year. Plus, you got $60 million with the local government, and whereby there's some funding to pay for some staffing. But there's expectation to have programs start on January 1st, 2023. And what the agency needs to do is authorities have to make a substantial effort in order to get things permitted. By having a decision today to have this area become the organic processing area would be a substantial effort and will start the program from collection to processing in one place. Should he decide to do this today and re-permit it, the follow-up as we have part of the compliance roadmap. And the compliance roadmap we vetted through the local task force on April 25th. It was a 2-hour meeting, got a lot of feedback. And again, on May 9th, on Monday, we had a webcast on procurement and ordinances and got some more feedback. And with all that, we want to update the compliance roadmap and with any decision tonight that you guys make towards should you want to proceed. So what would happen next is that would be some type of a mini request for proposal to transfer that organics to a permitted food waste compost facility. And then at the same time, over the short term, we'll try to permit a compost facility within county, could be 3 to 5 years, but in an interim, it'll be transferred to a permitted food waste compost facility within California. And so it's critical to stay on path to make a substantial effort. Should he not decide to go forth with the Hawthorne transfer station, I did some due diligence when I come up there. I've been through the Humboldt sanitation transfer station. It's kind of narrow. They don't have the appetite. I went down and saw Linda Wise down in Fortuna at the Eel River transfer station. There's some opportunities there. And so to transfer out food waste would be need to have a solid waste facilities permit, and Fortuna has one. And that would be an option. So within a compliance roadmap, we have all these different options laid out whereby Hawthorne was the first choice, but we would have to scramble for a secondary or tertiary place in order to make a substantial effort to comply with SB 1383.
Thank you, Evan. And so I'll talk briefly about the timeline, and then we can move to projected costs. So in the staff report, you can see that there's actually 2 timelines running congruently with each other. One is the Eureka Recycling Center, and the other obviously is the organics processor. One of the big things, the biggest barrier to entry for this is identifying suitable site locations for the Eureka Recycling Center. Staff's recommendation would be, if we go forward with this, that we advertise the closure of the Eureka Recycling Center May, with an anticipated closure of the Eureka Recycling Center in July of 2022. This would be needed to get rid of the backlog of material that's currently stored and that we will be collecting over the next 2 months, along with being able to, after the closure, do facility retrofits on the floor and roll-up doors at the current Eureka Recycling Center. For the organics processing, obviously the date that we're looking for is January 2023 to have this open. Throughout that timeline, we're looking at purchasing necessary equipment. Again, like I said, perform facility retrofits. We would need to recruit additional front-end staff for that processing facility. And as Evan touched on, develop a RFP for the transportation and disposal of organics waste that would not be still covered under the West Green contract that we currently have. Our projections say that we could open the new Eureka Recycling Center if everything went well in November of 2022. So you're looking at about a 6-month closure of the Eureka Recycling Center. One of the biggest issues that we've touched on in the past is the lack of disposal options for TVs, e-waste, and Freon appliances. That is still going to be a large problem. There are very few opportunities for residents to dispose of those materials in this area. And this will just get rid of probably the main one that is utilized for that type of disposal. Moving on to the projected costs. In the staff report, you'll see that the biggest barrier to entry, again, is the Eureka Recycling Center. Site location and the material baler are the 2 most substantial costs. The material baler could be reduced if the current baler located at the Eureka Recycling Center can be retrofitted to the location that we choose. Unfortunately, without choosing that location, we wouldn't know if that's possible or not, so that cost has been included. For the organics processing facility, The main thing would be site improvements and the adding of additional staff. One item that is not in there that you'll see is the RFP for the transportation disposal. That obviously would be to be determined at a later date, and we cannot provide the total cost at that time. But that will be a substantial cost, as is shipping any material out of our rural area. So for the grand total, you're looking at around $4 to $5 million to relocate the Eureka Recycling Center and provide the necessary retrofits, staffing, and operational costs for the organics processing facility. A couple options. Obviously, the board could choose to not move the Eureka Recycling Center and just open an organics processing facility at the Hawthorne Street transfer station. This would drop that total to around $1.3 million. Depending on additional staff we would need, it could actually be reduced more to around $1 million. But all told, if the board moves forward with relocating the Eureka Recycling Center and opening the organics processor, the safe bet would be around $5 million total. Did anyone have any questions or would like me to go over anything else? I know that was a lot of information to take in at one time.
Yeah.
I have questions.
ahead.
Yeah. Director Wilson.
I don't seem to have my little hand raiser thing on my screen today, but anyway, so it's still really a pretty, I guess, yet to be determined process of both funding and location of what happens to the recycling that's going into Humboldt waste management at Hawthorne now. There won't be any all that recycling is going to have to go somewhere else, and so the people are going to have a lot of recycling to either take somewhere else or just put it in their regular garbage. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, so the source separated material that we currently collect, that would be still collected at the Hawthorne Street transfer station as single stream, and that's covered under the processing and collection contract that we have with Recology. So for a 6-month period of time, we would not offer source separated, no charge drop off. That material still has the opportunity to be recycled through the single stream processing that we do over on the transfer station side.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only materials that people still could not drop off at the Hawthorne Street transfer station would be e-waste, CRTs, and Freon appliances. Those are the three materials that we no longer could accept for whatever time period the Eureka Recycling Center was closed.
Are we going to be able to offer an alternative where they can take that stuff?
The e-waste and CRTs and that or the source separated material.
Well, it just seemed like if we come out and say that we're no longer going to take these, then the public is faced with what do you do with it? Do we get a pushback for that, or does it end up? What happens to it? I mean, it's going to continue to exist.
Correct. So for the source separated, like I said, it could be dropped off either in your recycling. It could be dropped off at our single stream location. The e-waste CRTs, I believe they could be dropped off at Humboldt Sanitation and Recology. Linda's on here, so she can correct me if I'm wrong. And I believe that Recology Eel River also accepts Freon appliances. So those would be the locations that we would point people towards for the time period that we're closed.
It just seems, I'm not questioning what you're doing. I know you're putting in an awful lot of effort to make this work. I guess one of the things is an education process that the public needs to be aware of is they've got to deal with what they buy. I mean, in the past, it's just been a quick fix. You had this stuff, and when you were done with it, you were able to get rid of it quickly. And now there needs to be some responsibility for the public in general to be responsible for what they're purchasing when they think about how they're going to get rid of it, because it's going to become more and more difficult to make that happen. And so somewhere that needs to be, I don't know if that's something we can squeak in on our website, or we can squeak into somewhere that people get this message across. There's a responsibility to people to deal with, again, what they purchase and how they get rid of the old stuff instead of in the old days when everybody didn't use blood. There was no blood problems. And when it became a problem with the diseases in blood for operations and stuff, we had to change the way we think. And I think this disposal of waste, e-waste in particular, because there's so much of it, they've got to rethink what they're doing. And I know it's not your fault, Eric and Peter, but we could certainly help point people in that direction to be responsible.
So Frank, Board Member Wilson, we absolutely would do that. Peter's already made some inroads with the other transfer stations, reached out to them. Yes. We would start advertising for the shutdown, and we would shut down about 2 to 3 months after advertising. In that advertising for the shutdown, we would make sure that we have a blitz of education outreach to all the customers that would come, not only to the Eureka Recycling Center, but the transfer station, to let them know the projected timelines we're looking at and the alternative disposal sources that are available to them. So this is not something that we would just shut our doors cold turkey. We serve quite a few people with those 3 material streams. We definitely want to make sure that they know that we're not going away permanently, if that's the board's direction, and that they have alternative sources for disposal while we're moving.
That's good news. I know that you're responsible in what you're doing, but part of that question is to get this out as people watch this report. If people are watching it and if news media is watching it, that they know that HWMA is going to be doing things to not just walk away from them, but to still be a player in the community to make the problems work. It's a big deal. Thank you.
Director Wilson, I just want to thank you for you couldn't have stated it to me more accurately. And Eric's right. I will tell, and I'm going to jump ahead to what I was going to say in my report because it ties in, but a couple of days ago, I met with Allison Poklemba, who's our educational outreach specialist, who's been serving HWMA in our community for years. She shared with me an existing presentation, and she and I both agreed one of the frustrations is, it seems to wax and wane. People get the message and then we forget about it. And then to your point, I don't go into Walmart or Target and think, well, how much is that going to cost me to get rid of? But I've started to think that way because we all need to do that. And I certainly want to set an example in that way, but it's difficult. It's less difficult if we communicate consistently and with the appropriate amount of, for lack of a better word, passion about what we're doing. And, just continue to let people know. And I'm all about that transparency. My wife asked me the other day, how come we can't recycle this bag? Well, it's the wrong kind of plastic. Well, how do I know? Well, there you go. I mean, we grew up in LA. We knew in 1989 that recycling was coming. It's still an issue. So I am all about educational efforts. And to your point, and Eric's, we're not going to cold turkey. No one wants it on the side of the road. No one wants the trash or the appliances or anything else ugly to make our landscape or waterways any more ugly than they already are. The point is to reduce that. And we will make concerted efforts to ensure that people are educated in a way that's not, that's as friendly as it can be. We're all in it together, but here's what you need to do in the interim, and here's our timeline. And if there are any questions, we will field them. So I appreciate your input, and rest assured we are working on that.
Well, that's great, because being a rural county,
yes,
and particularly with Riadale, we have a road that goes through the backside of Riadale over to Ferndale, called Blue Slide Road. And when people find that they're not able to get rid of e-waste, now Fortuna Recology does take it, but if they're not able to get it, they get on these back roads, and there's more in southern Humboldt, and that's where the Freon based items, that's where the e-waste ends up on the side of the road or over a bank someplace.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things that seems to be better right now, but I don't want to see us in an effort to fix one problem, we create 2 others. And
agreed.
So,
well stated.
It sounds like you're on top of this and you're aware of it, so I appreciate it. And I'll shut up for the moment.
No, it's I welcome your input. We all need. I mean, one of my favorite sayings is you can't over communicate. How many things become big problems when we don't say what we need to say? or we think we've said it and we don't need to say it. Recycling, solid waste, no one, there's an inherent, in my experience, there's an inherent aversion to talking about trash, or then there's trash and trash that costs money. And those are two things that are, sticky. Well, we need to address them. We need to address them plainly and transparently. So I appreciate all the input.
And thank you, Director Wilson, for your, really eloquently stated questions and concerns. I'm wondering, a little unorthodox, because we are still in kind of board member question time period, if Director Wise would like to say anything, since your programs have been brought up several times now in the last few minutes.
I wouldn't. I've just been itching because I'm in collection and post collections. I've got 3 points to make. One of the things that's going to be happening with 1383 and in some of the areas is universal collection is going to become more common in a lot of your areas. And as far as, when you're getting your collection contracts for the long term, the bulky item pickup is going to be more and more available to your customers to use. And it will have to be something that we'll have to communicate on a constant basis with people to use. Recology to come to your home and pick it up rather than waiting until you can find somebody with a pickup truck to bring it to a transfer station. That will relieve a lot of pressure on the transfer stations when that happens, because one of the things that happens there is that the amount of staff time that's needed for managing people that come and have questions and want to talk to you when you're there, about having to pay for that material when it's part of your collection cost and part of your service that you get at the curbside. It's much more easy to get access to it. That's one thing. And the other thing to consider that doesn't come up in these conversations, though, is the importance of having a processing facility at the transfer station on Hawthorne Street. One of the things that you'd see if one of these processing facilities is located in an area that's not central to the biggest parts of the population there, is that the collection transportation costs from when we go to the curbside to wherever we're taking the material could increase and be reflected in people's bills. And that's one of the things that should be considered as well. So the wonderful thing about being located at the Hawthorne Street transfer station is that collection costs, at the curbside can be somewhat controlled if you're doing processing at the transfer station. And the other thing is the transfer station and the other programs that they provide aren't going to be impacted by losing the tonnage that would normally be coming over it as MSW, because no matter how much material you have in there, you still have to pay for the same amount of people who are in there. So you still need to have the revenue from people bringing in the organic material to the transfer station to make this work. So those are the 3 things I need to say about that. So yes, at the transfer station in the short term, we'll be at the Fortuna facility. We'll accept those materials. We're actually starting to get our people certified to be Freon, extractors, chemists out there so that we can extract the Freon ourselves. We were looking to recycle the Freon so that people might be able to purchase it. So you can get kind of a little bit of a circular economy with that. So that's what I have to say about that. So we'll save it for, I don't have anything later.
Thank you. And then I see that Supervisor Madrone has his hand up, and then I know Robin Prasker, you want to contribute some thoughts on this as well. But let's go to Supervisor Madrone first, just to make sure there aren't any questions that need to be asked.
Well, thank you, Chair. I have to say my head's swimming a little bit. I mean, it's such a huge decision, what we do as part of a much larger system and lots of moving parts and all that. And I certainly don't know the answer here tonight. Personally, I'm still struggling with how it's all going to work. But I do have to say that I think that charging for dumping is a short-sighted and foolish way to approach waste management, because, if you think about it, those that have money are able to pay to go dump. Those that don't have money can't afford to pay to go dump. They can't afford the gas, they can't afford the fees. And so it ends up piled around their homes. Just last month, I think we had Julia Peterson from Caltrans come and talk with us about the Clean California program, which is just phenomenal. 2 weeks ago in Eureka, we filled 17, what are they, 12 to 15 yard dumpsters. And the vast majority of that material was e-waste, refrigerators, tires, and large, bulky metal items. And it's just phenomenal. And so by charging fees for dumping, I think, I'd love to see an analysis, but it's my sense that we're spending more money on environmental cleanup than the revenues we receive for the dumping. It also equates to code enforcement. So for poor people not being able to afford the gas or the dumping, and it's piling up around their homes, not only is it a health and safety hazard with rats, but it's also a nightmare for the neighbors and everybody. And so then code enforcement comes in. We're spending millions of dollars at the county on code enforcement cleanups of individual properties that get out of control. So if you take a look at all the ancillary costs that happen because we charge dump fees, again, I would love to see an analysis, but my sense is that we're spending a lot more money cleaning up than the revenues we receive. But I don't know that for a fact. I've heard some other communities have done these analyses, but I don't know that we have in Humboldt. So I don't mean to make anything more difficult, but I struggle with this because I get calls every week from people complaining about code enforcement issues with properties that are just piled high in garbage and debris. And so it's a much bigger issue than just what choices will consumers have to be able to recycle and take their waste and all that. It's just such a big thing. And again, with all the organic waste coming on board, we already have big things on our table to try and figure out. So again, my apologies. I'm not trying to make it more difficult, but I hear that a lot from people in the community. Why don't we just let dumping be free? And then just about everything would come to the dump instead of into our creeks and our wetlands and roadsides. So just something for consideration.
Thanks, Director Madrone. Let's see, I have some thoughts on that, but I'm going to keep it to questions for right now and also let Robin Prasker has had her hand up, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Robin Prasker here, staff with City of Eureka. I did just want to provide a few comments on our end to consider with this proposal tonight. So Eureka is prepared to help with any and all contingency plans for the recycling center closure if this does go through. We recognize that that could be a hardship, and we are ready to think outside of the box and come up with different ideas to offer solutions. So I just hope that that helps make you feel confident that if you do make that decision, that we're ready to help. It does actually tie nicely to something Supervisor Madrone just mentioned, is actually we've been in communications with Caltrans about the Clean California program and having a free dump day pretty soon here in the next few months. So that could be very good timing to, if this does go through, if the recycling center is closed, to have a free dump day specifically for, say, e-waste and free on appliances. So I just wanted to share that potential. And then the City of Eureka is working on a zero waste action plan similar to the City of Arcata's. We're really dreaming up long-term plans of how we can reduce waste. And a lot of that comes with diversion and recycling programs. And it's no secret that HWMA is bursting at the seams over there. So long-term, relocating the recycling center to a larger property is going to provide opportunities in the many, many years to come to create more diversion programs. For example, our draft zero waste action plan right now is talking about construction and demolition waste. That's a really big industry, and there's not really centralized drop-off for that, and that could not really occur at HWMA currently with its footprint. Also, things like a building reuse center, textile recycling, where those things could occur, what agency could oversee it would, of course, be open to figure out, but HWMA seems like a natural fit if that's something the agency was interested in And none of that would be possible if the recycling center were to stay where it is. So I personally am feeling it's serendipitous to be considering a new, larger recycling center for thinking about the decades to come of diversion programs we could grow, especially with our city's zero waste goals, Arcata's zero waste goals, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing more zero waste programs and cities getting on board with those types of plans. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for your efforts on that. Let's go ahead for Director Tom Matson, or you're director, right, Tom? Sorry.
Not an HWA director, but I am a director
County, yeah.
of Public Works. I want to go on the record to support the swap out of the recycling center, at least for the short term, to make so we're making substantial compliance. I think this is a big step for the county to make substantial compliance, and with the $10,000 a day fine hanging over my head, it's more than a cattle prod. So I would encourage you to do that. And if there's anything we can do to help with the recycling in the interim, such as, we didn't get a Clean California grant, but I know Caltrans has a lot of money in District 1 that they're looking to spend. And I think we could lean heavily on them in the interim period between getting a new site and when if Hawthorne is transferred over, to provide some of those collection services on day drops, so that the people in the greater Eureka area can have access to a facility close to them for their recycling and e-waste. So I would throw that out, and I would throw out also hitting them up for possible assistance with funding for the recycling, new recycling plot of land or facility. I think there's a lot of opportunities there with the money they have. And Julia's the correct contact. And also just to note from what Mr. Wilson said, yeah, Blue Slide Road is mine, and we spend a significant amount of money. I spend about $250,000 a year collecting illegal dumping and getting it off the roadsides and out of the creeks and then into the disposal stream where it needs to be. So I truly share that concern with Councilman Wilson. That is a pandemic problem here in Humboldt County. I will just go ahead and lay that out because it is. My costs have been going up every year for illegal dumping, and the more facilities, the more pop-ups we can offer for people to have a chance. Anything the county can do to help, I would help. But I do want to go on record to support you converting over, at least in the short term, to food processing while we look at our long-term solution, which I doubt will be at Hawthorne, but we're already talking about different properties where a long-term composting facility, we definitely, it's my recommendation at least that we keep it in county. We quit hauling things out of the county because I think we can definitely use all the compost, and especially with the Nordic fish farms coming on and all the high nitrogen opportunity we have there. I think we're looking at a top quality composting project in the long term, but in the short term, we really need your help to just make sure we're making substantial compliance and doing the right thing to process what we can, when we can, how we can. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been great. Oh, and yeah, we'll just keep, I have questions, but I see we sort of kind of incidentally dovetailed into public comment. So we'll just go, I'll hold my questions and go ahead and let everyone make comment. Emily Benvey.
Hi, this is Emily Benvey, Deputy Director of Environmental Services for the City of Arcata. I'm in transit right now, so I apologize if my audio is not coming in through very well. And I am going to keep my comments brief, but I just wanted to voice complete support for, or I should say solidarity with both Eureka and the County of Humboldt. We've been working regionally on SB 1383 compliance, as well as with HWMA staff. So I just wanted to voice support, and I think I'm starting to break up, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And we could hear you just fine if that alleviates any concern you had.
Oh, good. Thank you.
It's been really great to thank you for all of the staff from other cities and county jurisdictions who came. It's really great to hear your support for this. Just because I have a couple questions, I'm going to ask them. So I appreciate the kind of anticipated projected startup costs. In my mind, that might be low, so is there kind of a contingency fee / plan or, planning in place in case those costs are higher than are anticipated?
So the cost will end up being higher than the anticipated solely because we can't project the RFP cost.
Right.
But that is going to represent probably the greatest cost overall to this entire operation. Luckily, we have the ability to figure out how much that's going to cost with the RFP and implement that in coming years, either in an additional HWMA base fee, a separate organics waste management fee. We have other ways to be able to collect that in the future once those costs are known. So we don't have to collect those upfront. Similar to solid waste, we can collect those fees as we are collecting and processing the material and shipping that out. That's one of the benefits of that. As far as the infrastructure and the moving of the Eureka Recycling Center, those are actually high. I put them at the high end. So in order, as long as there's no permitting issues, which cross our fingers on that one, we should be within that budget of projections to be able to move and some retrofits to get that the organics facility up and running.
And do we anticipate that there might be some grant funding available for some of this as well?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We would work with Egner and Associates to look at any and all funding avenues that are afforded to us as far as the recycling center and organics, both sides.
Great. And then, we're not every city in Humboldt County on this board. And so I'm just curious, but yet we're looking at providing services, I think, for potentially every city in Humboldt County. This is, I guess, a question and a comment. Like, I would definitely encourage us, like, reaching out to those, cities and places that aren't included, but have any efforts been made, or have they expressed interest?
Yeah, as a reminder, every single jurisdiction signed on to participate in the regional SB 1383 activities. So that includes Trinidad and the city of Fortuna. They have been brought along every step of the way. They are a participating jurisdiction in the SB 1383 compliance, the roadmap. They have been in attendance at all the webinars and meetings. So they are fully up to speed with what we are presenting tonight and the compliance roadmap and the potential future of SB 1383 compliance in Humboldt County.
Director, I can attest to that as well. I can echo that. Merritt Perry from City of Fortuna is calling all the time and a lot of good comments, very supportive, as well as I'm helping out Ferndale and Trinidad on their ordinances to get their funding. So you have a broad-based support to do this today.
That's really reassuring. Thank you. Let's see, just another, I appreciate Director Madrone's, kind of concerns just about the way we approach the system in general. I do think that kind of thinking is important, but would require, I don't know, I'm like, oh, let's have a working group on that and, have that as like a, I think personally, I do support going forward with this today because I think it's, we're in a time where we have to make tough choices. And I think that this is just one of them, that we do need to meet these SB 1383, compliance mandates. Though it's not a comfortable or easy process. I do think that we just need to communicate more, about what how to make sure that these items that can't be recycled now or won't be able to be recycled at HWMA can be taken care of other places. And to that point, I also think that there's the opportunity for a bulletin board or something in HWMA that maybe has other resources for recycling and things too, you know, to Robin Prosper's excellent presentation at our last council meeting about, you know, that shingles can be recycled places, which I never knew. So, you know, it'd be great just for HWMA to also be kind of a knowledge resource for some of these other recycling options, you know, as we shift and you know, since we're going to have to do so much communication around these changes anyway, if we can really just, you know, I think the more resources people have, the better.
Chairwoman Castellano, we do have a ton of information up on our website, and we also have the hotline. We have several hotlines. So we have the Household Hazardous Waste hotline, which deals directly with household hazardous waste questions that go directly to our hazardous waste techs. And we also have like the reduction and hard to recycle hotline as well. And folks can call that and get one of our programs analysts. They can get myself as well. They also, in general, can just call the main line. And our staff is extremely good at directing them to the individual who has that answer. We do have a bulletin board that we post the agendas on, so we absolutely can start putting more info on there as well. And you'll notice in both of the projected costs is changing and additional signage. Some of that signage would be letting people know where alternative disposal sites are for the materials that used to come here as well.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I'm a visual person, so like I kind of just imagine, you know, when I'm going through the line to pay my fees, you know, as I exit the transfer station, like, if there was something there, or like when I paid my fee, like a booklet or leaflet I could get that had that information. People like me would read it. Anyway, I want to open it up for if there are any other questions or comments from members of the board, or if anyone would like to entertain a motion, you can also do that. There's a kind of 3-part recommended action that was part of our agendas, if you'll see it there. And I'm happy to read that out loud if that's useful for anyone. I guess, sorry, just to clarify, if I'm looking at the agenda again, you know, we have received timeline, provide direction. I do think it would be useful to have a formal motion from the board, you know, for this, because it is a relatively high impact decision in terms of, you know, moving forward with staff's recommendation or not, just because, you know, I don't know, I think some formality is useful for bigger decisions such as this.
Madrone, I will move staff recommendation.
Thank you, Director Madrone. Would anyone like to second that?
Sure, I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Director Hogan. Any other questions or comments from the board? I want to make sure that everyone has, you know, the time to have their questions answered if there are questions about this. Okay, seeing none, let's just go ahead with the vote. Let's see, Director Hogan.
Yes.
Director Madrone,
Yes.
Director Wilson. You're muted, Director Wilson.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Director Wilson. And I also vote yes on this item. Director Matthews and Director Smith are absent. So
I'm sorry, this is Laurel. I just want to double check. So can you tell me exactly what this motion was? It was the motion to proceed with the staff recommendations?
yes, it was.
All right, thank you.
Thank
But
you.
could you please clarify for me staff recommendation, because the staff report does not have a recommendation that's called out under recommended action.
True.
So we,
Yeah, Nancy.
sorry, I'll put a face to my voice. We actually need you to state what the motion is, just for, everybody's benefit and for the minute takers' benefit as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Chairwoman Castellano, staff's recommendation is to relocate the Eureka Recycling Center to an off-site facility location and use the current Eureka Recycling Center footprint to incorporate an organics waste processing facility.
And our Director Madrone and Director Hogan in agreement with that as the staff recommendation? Thank you. And Director Wilson?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm also in agreement with that. Thank you.
Just very quickly, does that not also include looking to reopen that recycling in an appropriate timeline? I think, it was all kind of wrapped together, right? With several steps.
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. No, and it is really important, these kind of weightier decisions, to have make sure we're all clear on what we're agreeing on. So thank you, Nancy, for stepping in there and making an appearance. Okay, so that motion has passed, and now we will move on to
Madam Director, and I could finish up the 1383 where we go from here, because this is a landmark decision with great leadership, and this really makes the roadmap more clear and timely. And with Spencer Fine from CalRecycle, he would definitely recognize the substantial efforts being made today. And what I'll do from here is that we had a draft compliance roadmap, and we got a lot of input back from the local task force. We had an ordinance meeting on Monday about procurement. We're going to add a little bit more on biomass as there as well. But by having today's decision, I can then go back into the roadmap and finalize it with what it means going forward, with everything Eric talked about having the what activity goes on site with LEA on permitting it, but this mini RFP to transfer food waste out. And we have it's a key point. So when I can finalize that by mid-May, it will be able to be posted up with this key decision today, highlighted, and then I can decant it down to a 6-page policy briefing that could be out there for easily decant the 71 pages of all these great ideas and all the workshops and all the ideas we had, but put it to a 6-page policy briefing so that can be the public affairs document for the general public. So what it meant today, which is a great decision. Where we go from here is by October 1 in 2022, you have the first jurisdictional compliance report due. Each and every jurisdiction, regardless of size, has to put together initial annual jurisdictional compliance report with the status of your ordinance, status of what's going on. We're going to have the edible food recovery report ready in early June. Abound is coming back up for the second time on May, I think 27th and 28th. And then we're going to do some more stakeholder meetings on edible food, meet with some key generators, and then have that report come out in early June. So that's another key benchmark date coming up. The expectation from CalRecycle is by January 1st, 2022, you would have the programs in place, And I think that we can show that we're making a substantial effort today. And then we start working on what types of organics can be collected within the ordinance and work on the ordinance. And then Recology is working with all the cities with their specific franchises. But we also know that the supply chain of trucks are 18 months away. So this RFP could be managed in a phase-in approach. A lot of good ideas today that I'm excited about because we get to advance the program and make a timely decisions where CowerCycle should be satisfied with what happened today in order to show the effort to comply with 1383.
Thank you. We're glad that CowerCycles will be glad. Fantastic. Well, it's good that we have a plan in place and great community partners on board. So thanks to everyone who's here tonight. And thanks to the board for taking the bold step and moving forward. Let's move on to item number 7, standing item board member reports. Are there any board members that report?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go for
Sorry.
it.
Yeah, I had a quick comment on the last item. Sorry, I had my hand up, but it's hard to keep track of everything here. I just wanted to make sure that in the actions we're taking tonight, and I thought I got clarification of that on the last motion, that we are moving forward to relocate the recycling. I think that was confirmed as part of that previous motion. And then developing food processing. I realize that in the short term, we may have to do any number of things with recycling and food waste, et cetera, but I want to just express my strong support for figuring out how to manage that locally so that if we do haul anything out of Humboldt County, it's a value-added product, a fertilizer, not just raw food waste. As Tom Matson said, I think there's a lot of emerging opportunities. And so I just want to express strong support for not only moving forward with the recycling relocation, but having food processing facilities locally in Humboldt to create compost. And I don't know where the appropriate time is to bring that forward. It doesn't necessarily need to be a motion right now. I just want to make sure that we're considering that. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Madrone. And if often in board member reports, if there are requests for future agenda items, that's great to bring that up. So if this is something that you want to, specifically agendize, we can also do that.
Well, it seems like it's on standing items for now, and I think that's fine because we're going to be talking about this stuff at every meeting for a while until we have it all figured out, which will be like, what, in 100 years maybe or something? So I'm good with as it is.
Shut up.
Okay, thank you. Do any board members have anything to report for the board member reports section? I'll just say quickly that Robin Prosker did give a really, the city of Eureka is working on a zero waste action plan, and we're doing it in multiple parts. So we had our last council meeting, we discussed construction waste specifically, or went into quite a bit of detail on that. I do think that, there are opportunities to collaborate just for better education around, how those items can be gotten rid of. And then also, we used to meet in City Hall 2 years ago. So, City Hall is, this time is still held in City Hall, and we are all geared up for hybrid meetings where people could, I know, like Director Wilson, it's a big trek for you to come to Eureka, for these meetings, but, it would be possible for people to meet in person and on Zoom. And so, I don't know if we have to decide tonight, but if you could maybe let our Director Peter know what you might like with that. It'd be, we do have the option to meet in person again. Yes, Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that some of you may be aware that the state legislature currently has pending several bills to make permanent the option of remote meeting without needing to have the emergency proclamation. So that could help facilitate, the meetings of a joint powers authority like this one that has representation spread out over a really large terrain, without the pandemic. And in the short term, the hybrid option with that technology is a really good way to go. So, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, I will close board member reports and move on to the executive director's report.
With apologies, Madam Chairwoman and Board, on a point of order, if I jumped the gun, but I've said what I already needed to say in that my focus right now, in other than what we're going to go forward with, obviously with Eric and company to vet an alternative ERC recycling site and get organic food working on the current floor, is education, education, education. So I will keep everybody informed as I go forth with that. I will also very unashamedly shoot over drafts and say, hey, what do you think? Is this going to serve your community? If it is not, I will not be offended with direct capital NO, no, please revise it. So let me know what you think as I put these together, what you think is going to work, and I will absolutely go to town on it. So that's all I have on that.
Thanks, Director Fuller. And I see Supervisor Madron that your hand is still up. Is that just because you haven't taken it down, or did I miss you for something for the board member reports?
I'm all good. I was tardy on pulling my hand down. Thanks, Teach.
No problem. It's easy to leave it just up. I just didn't want to leave you out. Okay, so with all that, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, folks.